We don't get paid because work is painful and people wouldn't do it otherwise. We get paid because we create value. The creation of value is a really joyful thing. To create a product, a service, an organization that people find value such that they're going to exchange their money for it, the work itself can actually be joyful.
Can work actually be fun? That is what we're diving into today. I was joined by Bree Groff, a workplace culture expert and author of the book, Today Was Fun. With years of experience guiding leaders at companies like Microsoft, Google, and Target, Bree shares her insights on how to make work more enjoyable while building a thriving culture. We explore burnout, the shift in the workforce over the years, the challenges and benefits of remote work, and how to change your mindset to focus on what makes work fun. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Bree, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kate. I'm so excited.
I am so excited too, because before we pressed record, I was chatting with Bree and telling her I'm so happy that you wrote this book because it is so needed. We're going to talk a little bit about your book, Today Was Fun, and really dive into work and finding joy in your work. And gosh, this topic is just so needed. So I'm really excited to dig into it. Bree, why don't you tell us, as we're recording this, your book is not even officially out yet. It will be out by the time someone's listening to this in July 2025. You're launching this book, which is amazing. It's called
Thanks.
Today Was Fun. So tell us about Today Was Fun. What's it about and why did you write this book?
So the title, to start with, is the simplest way to describe my hope for every reader and for the world that not every day, but most days, at the end of the day, you can curl up in bed and think, today was fun. And we do that sometimes, and on days that are Saturdays and Sundays, and maybe a little Friday. I wrote the book because I find far too often we are wishing away the work week. We are trying to get to Friday. We say things like, oh, when will this week be over already? We aren't valuing 5/7 of our life properly. And there has been so much written about the business case for employee engagement, all which is true, all which I'm so grateful that those numbers are true. Gallup does a great job researching here that engagement drives performance, having a best friend at work drives engagement, all of these things. But I felt like no one was making the existential case of what happens when we dread essentially 1/3 of our lives over the course of our working time. So the book is split up into two sections. The first, the premise is that work should be a source of joy. And that seems, to some people, that's radical. To some people, that's ridiculous. Work is called work for a reason. But I make the case for why that's true and how you can make it true for you. And then the second part of the book is that work should be only one of many joys in our life. So I write about how overwork became so prevalent, how we can get good at life, not just get good at work. My goal with it is to sort of reframe and reset our relationship with work such that it isn't something that's extracting from us. It's actually something that's contributing to the value of our lives.
You even write about it in the book when people talk about TGIF or, it's Monday. And I get so frustrated by it because it's just become the social norm. Like, that's what you say, right? Like, oh, we hate Mondays and we love Fridays and, oh, it's Wednesday, middle of the week, the work week's almost over. And it's almost like people are living for the weekend, with that being so much of the culture, even how people talk. Like, no one even really pushes back on it. It's just kind of like, okay, like even people that do find joy in their work, it's almost like, okay, we just kind of like roll past it. So how can a leader who's listening, who's like, okay, this all sounds really great, but I need my people to come to work. It's not about joy for them. It's about, we have to get things done. We have to be productive. And how can a leader kind of shift their mindset and help their people as well?
When I talk about fun at work, and that leader is that's like, oh, yeah, fun, but we're like, when are we doing the work? I sometimes need to define what I mean when I say fun at work. There's sometimes the fun at work, which is like icing on your work cake. This is the happy hour, the ping pong table, like the offsite where you go mini golfing. That's all good. I'm pro offsites and mini golfing and all of that. Sometimes when people or leaders are so firmly convinced that work is hard and painful and drudgery, it like does not compute that work could be fun. So if we're talking about fun, it's outside of work. But actually, the work itself can be really joyful if we can start with the premise that we don't get paid because work is painful and people wouldn't do it otherwise. We get paid because we create value. That's it. The pain is entirely optional. The creation of value is a really joyful thing. To create a product, a service, an organization that people find value such that they're going to exchange their money for it, that's fun. To show off your skills. Like I'm a really good, whatever it is, coder, designer, marketer. To flex that and to see the impact of it, that's fun. To build with other people, with colleagues who you enjoy and you find funny and interesting and inspiring, that's fun. Sometimes even to make mistakes and to course correct, or even sometimes in an emergency, there's a little bit of adrenaline that's like, yeah, we've got to climb this hill together. That's also fun. And so I challenge, this imaginary leader that's like, oh, Mondays, to reframe the question of if work is inherently fun, how can we expect it to be so and start to amplify the joyful qualities of work even on Mondays? Maybe Mondays you have a heads down block for 2 hours so you can focus on really making the work the most brilliant it can be. Maybe you take some time for camaraderie. Maybe you share some skills, all sorts of ways, but it really depends on first believing the work itself, not just the happy hours, but the work itself can actually be joyful.
You talk about, can your work be funnable? Funnable,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Funnable. And that's I think that's the section you're talking about. And I really like this because it was almost an exercise that you were giving people on how to identify the joy. And it was where you find the joy. And it could be one of these things or multiple of these things. And it was the joy in the making, the joy in the skills. And so when you put that list, when you created that list, I thought that was so clever because anyone that's working, they're going to checkbox one of those things, something that gets them out of bed in the morning and goes into that office. I mean, if someone's at a workplace and they are doing the work, like there's got to be some reason for it. There has to be something that they're coming in for.
Yes.
So how can someone who's like, I don't know, I don't buy it. I'm in this really harsh industry. I think this applies to everyone else. This applies to their role and their jobs in fun industries, not in my industry, because maybe someone is working in a factory or someone is working in a plumber or HVAC or something in the service business where it's very challenging work. So how can they figure out if there is an opportunity for their work to be funnable?
Yes. Funnable. My editor was like, that's not a word, Bree. And I'm like, it's fine.
It is now.
It is now. And then she was on board. The list you're referring to. So joy in the making and actually the creation of whatever you're making, even if you're fixing sinks. Joy in the people around you. Joy in skills. Joy in adventure. There's a lot of adventure at work, especially in stressful environments. Joy in the product. There's so many other joys. It's really about diversifying some of those sources of joy within your working life. The show The Office is a great example of this. They work in paper sales. For anyone who's watched the show, they work for Dunder Mifflin. It's the most boring job you could imagine. And my apologies to anyone listening working in paper sales, but they picked it for a reason, to show that even if the content of the work is not fun, the people can make it really joyful. Conversely, I don't know, maybe you just don't like the people you're working with. That happens sometimes. And I don't know, maybe you're a lawyer, but you just find contract law fascinating. Not for everybody, but somebody finds it fascinating. So then you're really focusing on the content itself. Or maybe it's the mentorship that you find really joyful. There's always something. And if there's truly nothing, then that's the time to think of my job is not funnable. I've got to figure out some sort of financially feasible exit plan. But usually there's something. And if you're listening and thinking like, how do I get through this day? I'm not having any fun. My best strategy there is what I call thin slicing. So if a whole day doesn't feel fun to you, if you zoom in close enough, you can usually find a moment in your day that's fun. Let's say you're a barista and your back is killing you and your feet are killing you and you're like, I can't pour another latte. But maybe you made one super beautiful latte art and you handed it to someone and they smiled. Like that's a moment. There's moments of joy always on offer. Even in a factory, you look across and you see like a friend and they're like, hey. And just for a hot second, you feel connected to somebody else. There's always some joy on offer if we look for it.
It seems like such a mental game, such a mindset shift on how you perceive the work that I mean, this is anything in life, right? Like, what are your circumstances? What is your situation? And how can you find the joy in whatever it is that you are doing and whatever it is that you're working on? I often will ask people when I'm out and about if they enjoy their job. Like, if you go into a store or like you said, a coffee shop or something, I love asking people that question. Oh, do you enjoy your job? And so many people, while I know lots of people don't, but there are still lots of people like, oh, I love it. And then I ask them why. And it's, my boss is so great, or the people are so fun, or like that's what's so fun, especially if you go into a place where you can tell the team members like each other. You can tell they have like some camaraderie. They're friends, and so I feel like it really comes down to just this idea of being able to shift our mindset into make it be more about finding the meaning, finding the purpose, finding the joy. It has been very interesting. The workforce has changed over the years, especially over like the past 5 years. I feel like a lot of people, their perspective of work has also very much changed, right? Like the other generations were very hardcore. Like I think about my dad, who's like, what do you mean finding passion and joy at work? Like, no, I have like 4 kids to feed. Like you go to work and you get a paycheck. And then over the years, it has become a lot more, oh, like I want to work for a place where there's a purpose, where I'm doing something that matters, where I feel like I can make a difference. And so that has really shifted and changed. How much responsibility do you think that leaders have in creating this environment where joy is even possible? And then how much of the responsibility falls on the individuals to find the joy in the environment?
In terms of leaders, you reap what you sow. So I would say there's a lot of responsibility. If you lead an organization with the understanding that we are here for the shareholders and shareholders alone, we are human resources, we are the input to the system that produces the dollars, some people will sign up for that. Some people will take the paycheck, but you'll also get the turnover and engagement to match. So I think there's a lot of responsibility, but also opportunity for leaders. Because the more that I have worked with executives, like very CEOs of large organizations over the years, they feel a lot of pressure and also they secretly want to have fun too. And so it's an opportunity for them to create the kind of workplace where they also like coming to work despite all of the pressures on their shoulders. So there's a lot there. And having done consulting for a long time, there are so many levers to pull, everything from defining your culture and your values to systems, processes, calendar, time off. Like all of those things are sort of systemic levers. At an individual level, there's also so much opportunity despite whatever is happening at the company level. Because sometimes you only have so much control. You can only control maybe yourself if you have some direct reports, your small team, but there's still ample levers that you can pull to make your day more joyful, especially at the local team level. Probably most of your experience at work is your experience of those people that you work with every day. And like corporate policy, this or that, it'll, whatever it'll be, it'll be. But if you at a local level can do things like have a quick check-in every day with your team. Like, all right, everybody, scale of 1 to 5. How are you feeling? Put it on your hands. I'm a 2, I'm a 5. Everyone goes around 30 seconds each. How are you doing? Now you've humanized the team. You've created a little bit of a moment of connection and of joy. That's something that you can do. And very much in the book, I wrote from the perspective of your immediate team, which really comprises like 80% of how you experience work anyway.
Can you share an experience of a time when the leadership team brought you in? What were they challenged by? And then how were you able to help them to find more joy and also just create a more dynamic culture?
Yeah. So one client, one of my favorite clients, brought us in. This was maybe our second or third engagement with them because they were going through a huge growth spurt, doing a ton of M&A work, and we're a global organization. And with that, as you understandably so, you sort of have this fractured culture. You have all of these sort of legacy cultures from the acquisitions, people all over the world. And so the CEO really wanted to create a cohesive culture where people could really feel the support of the organization and the CEO and executive team in particular. So what we did, we designed a full week every day. There was a little 90-minute session at the top of the day where sort of orchestrated globally, where we would bring all employees together to experience some part of the organization, celebrate it, and sort of sense make like who are we as a company? Where are we going? So we did lots of the things that you would imagine. We did a deep dive on their product. We did a deep dive on customer and impact. All of these things that are like, yeah, that's very sensible to do. People, and people liked it. But the most highly rated component of that entire week was this absolutely most ridiculous thing we did, which was we pitched to the CEO. This is like a very technical industry. How would you feel about explaining your very technical business to a bunch of kids? And by the way, can we come to your house and film this? And can we use your kids as well? We'll bring some others. And by the way, maybe we should make it like picnic themed. So you're like sitting around, like all the kids are story time and a picnic. And this CEO, he was so game. I love him for this. And so we made these series of essentially commercials. Also, on the consulting end, we were like, wait, are we funny enough to pull this off? And so then we found this comedian that we hired as a comedy consultant to help us make these videos funnier. And so then we shot it. I brought my daughter, like everyone else on the team, whoever had kids, were like, bring the kids, sign the waivers. And we did these little videos. They were ridiculous and hilarious. And the CEO is doing story time with this like technical SaaS product and the 5-year-olds. And people loved it. That was the best part of the whole week. And I share this story because there's so much joy that we don't tap into because it sometimes doesn't feel professional. It doesn't feel normal or like this sensible thing to do. But people really at their core, even the most hardcore workers amongst them, like they still want to have a good day and have a laugh. And that will always be one of my favorite consulting engagements because we took a risk, like I took a risk pitching this to the CEO and it paid off in spades.
Oh, that's so awesome. And I love that you share it's humanizing us. Like that's what's so wonderful is that I feel like we're all so much more similar than we think we are. And I'm so fortunate because the work that I get to do, what do? We talk about dreams. We talk about people's dreams. So talk about humanizing people, right? It's like the dreams that people have, they are so similar. People want to spend time with their family. They want to go on vacations. They want to buy their first home and they want to have better relationships with their significant others. And it's all these beautiful things that everyone can say, oh yeah, I would love that. Or, oh my gosh, someone says they want to run a marathon. Oh my gosh, I would love to run a marathon. And so it like really connects people. And that's what I feel like this is so similar in this sense of helping people kind of create that culture of joy. Like at the heart of it, realizing, look, we've got a job to do. We're a business where, yes, of course, we need to make money and run this business and create value for our clients and all of those things. But it's like, I love when people like in a boardroom are like, guys, this isn't heart surgery. Like we're not, losing lives. It's like really to like remember what it is that you're doing, bringing it back to that humanity piece and really just treating people like people. I feel like sometimes there is such this disconnect. And I would be so curious your thoughts on, especially today, because I find I talk to a lot of people in HR. So I'm like, is it crazy being in HR right now? Because there's all these people that are filming getting fired or filming conversations that they're having with their bosses or things that are going on. And like nobody wants to, get canceled or say the wrong thing. And so it's almost like, how do we humanize and like, how do you stay professional, but also not like, we're in this box and we can't even talk like human beings. So how do you navigate all of this today?
Yeah. Oh, my dear loved ones in HR. I know I've worked with a lot of HR teams myself, and it is hard. It's hard to be in that sort of reactionary protection mode because it feels like we have to be. And I get that instinct. I mean, even putting all the weight of the world aside, just, I know so many HR leaders that feel like they fight so hard to have a place at the table, to make the case for people programs and culture, that it sometimes feels not safe to be like, should we be having fun today? Like, should we care? I do think there is definitely a business case to be made for humanizing work. But even more so, it does exactly what you were talking about. It removes people's sense of barriers or like having their fists up. So a lot of times I'll talk about this sort of paradigm shift I'm hoping to make. Because right now, the default exchange between employer and employee is employer tries to get as much work as possible from an employee and pay as little as possible. Conversely, the employee tries to get as much money as possible and get away with doing as little as possible. This is the sort of like capitalism exchange as we know it. But also, I think it's a bad system. So at a team level, my goal is to look out for my team, and their goal is to look out for the work and the client. As an organization, what happens when we start with a little bit of generosity of, if I'm leading a team and we have a canceled meeting, I'll try and say, hey, you all just go take a walk. Let's go take a nap for an hour. Like I'm looking out for them. And then conversely, they're like, I've got your back. If things get really crazy and it's crunch time, I'm there for you, Bree. That sort of exchange of generosity is only possible when you humanize each other. So as a leader, if I'm worried about the direction of a project, I'm not saying everything's fine, we're moving ahead, we have to double down and it's crunch time. I'm saying, team, I don't know if we're in a position to create the impact that we've promised, and that worries me a little bit. I think it's still possible if we do X, Y, and Z. And then I've humanized myself as a leader, and the team's like, yeah, I totally get that. I see that. Thank you for bringing this up. Here's my 3 ideas. Let's put this into a plan and make it happen. The humanizing, it just means so much because you see people with a different lens. And at work, it's so common to put on our business masks and pretend like we are these professionals that can't be harmed but it's not good for the business and it's not good for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's very interesting. It also is interesting the different generations of people that are all working together and how can they work together with knowing that they're they're working towards this common mission and vision. And at the same time, there's a lot of boomers and then millennials, Gen Z, like we've all grown up differently. We've experienced work differently. And so when you're working with a team with all different types of individuals and people, and what are some of the things that you've seen with working with lots of different generations?
It is really hard. Like my Gen X colleagues, they've worked so hard. They did everything they were told. Like I myself am an elder millennial. But they were at the office 5 days a week. They took 4 weeks of parental leave and we're back at it. And so I understand that in many ways, it's like, why is no one else doing what I did? With younger generation, I get that. As a millennial, Anne Helen Peterson coined us the burnout generation because we're super hyper optimizers. And so we're trying to do our best. Gen Z is waltzing in with work-life balance and purpose and meaning like never before. And it's like, hey, but we still have to make those numbers, so why are you going to yoga in the afternoon? Anyway, I have empathy for all of these different perspectives. And honestly, the same antidote applies. We're never perhaps going to have shared experiences or perhaps be on the same page perfectly, but we also do have to humanize some of our shared needs so that we can understand each other better. So even the Gen Xers who are working, doing everything that they're told, they too want to get good sleep and be with their families. And frankly, the Gen Z, there was just a new report out on Gen Z and millennial workers and what drives them. Only 6% wanted to rise to senior leadership. Like 6% aspired to that position, which is wild given that's how organizations are structured to give you the carrot up the promotion ladder. So you'd think, oh, they're lazy, but they're not. Their appetite for growth was one of the top, within the top 2, maybe, drivers. Growth meaning learning and applying their skills. It's just so we have to come to understand each other a little bit better. I feel this acutely as sort of now in the middle of these generations. And understanding that at the end of the day, we all want to have a good day at work. We all want to do good work. I've never met anyone who's like, I don't want to do good. I want to be a bad employee. Like most people, like they want to do their work. They're only saying, if they do say that, they're saying that because they're feeling resentful because something has gone wrong with the trust in their company.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone say they want to be a bad employee, just heard people say they don't want to be an employee. And that's a whole other conversation.
Well, then your work is not fundable, and then you find a new role.
Find a new role. And people have to believe, right? Like we have to believe. We're not going to strive for joy at work if we don't believe that it's possible to have joy at work. And that's one of the reasons why I think your book is so important. It's a different lens to help people realize, hey, your work can be joyful. It also doesn't have to be everything. Like it doesn't have to be all of your fulfillment and all of the pieces. And so like, let's talk a little bit about that because it's kind of like this spectrum, right? Like some people are so into their work that it's like they're everything. And so how can people kind of have that nice balance of, hey, I find joy at work. It's not always perfect. It's not always great. And it's not the place where it's the only place that I can find full fulfillment. It's a piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually quite dangerous if we start to equate our value with our work. It's the same as, having your life savings invested in one stock. It's just very, very risky because a bad day at work is now a bad day of life. And so I do firmly believe work is a source of joy, but it should just be one of many in our lives as well. Now, it's hard because, some people do want to work. So I should say, there's some people who work all hours because they're like, this is what they're paying me to do. This is what the industry demands. I don't want to, but I'm doing it. That's one problem. There's another class of people who really love working all hours, who and honestly, if that's working for you, don't let me tell you otherwise. But I do think there's a lot of people who overwork and feel like, oh, I do it because it's important and I'm building a legacy. This is what the business requires. This is why they pay me the big bucks. I'm a salaried employee. This is just what it is. The problem with overworking, even if you enjoy it and want to, is that there's an opportunity cost. Definitely. Like you only have so many hours in a day. So if you are spending 12 hours a day at work, tell me, when did you exercise? When did you make like a decent lunch for yourself? When did you check in with a friend? When are you sleeping? When are you doing something so stupid and pleasurable like a crossword puzzle or, anything else that brings you joy? So the opportunity cost is real. So it's one of the reasons I say in the book, get good at life, not just work. And also, you are the defender of date nights, crossword puzzles, and your health, because sometimes it feels that way. Because work is greedy. It's like an invasive species. It will just spread over your calendar wherever you don't stop it. And so sometimes it really does feel like you have to defend the rest of your life from overworking. So that means putting date nights on the calendar. You don't have to make this public to the rest of your company, putting exercise on your calendar, making sure that you have some sort of hobby, even if you have young kids and the young kids are your hobbies for a few years, something so that when you're not working, you're not just waiting to go back to work, which honestly, I think happens a lot of times. Like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm going to like scroll on social media, watch some Netflix, maybe I'll order some takeout and wait until work comes around the next day. We have to find other joys in our life beyond work.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, and yes. Oh my gosh. It is, again, we get to do very similar work. And it's just like, it brings so much joy to my team when we start dreamstorming with them and they uncover creative pursuit or something that they gave up that they used to love, like, the guitar or playing piano or gardening or whatever it is that they used to love to do. And then, we lose that sense that is available to us. And it's such a big reason. I think so much of the work that you get to do is so similar to our work. And it's even very similar to the book that I wrote, Do What You Love, because it's so much around that. It's like these things are not a nicety in life. They are critical in your life, like some type of creative pursuit. In fact, it's cool. I was listening to Kevin O'Leary, one of the sharks on Shark Tank. He's so interesting. And he was talking about how he only hires people when they have a hobby of some kind. They have something that they're interested in, whether it's being in a band or they go snowboarding or surfing, something, because we need that outlet. In fact, if anyone that's listening right now, they're probably like, yes, it's like, that's when I find my best ideas, when I'm out walking or playing with the kids. And it's like, we sit behind our computer and we're waiting and waiting, waiting to discover the perfect answer of what we need to do. But it's never going to come behind the desk. It's only going to come when we're doing the most random thing. And we've got to have those things in our lives. And we also have to look forward to those things. We get to look forward to work and then knowing, oh my gosh, on Wednesday, I'm going to have that date night with my wife or my husband. Or, oh, this Saturday, we're going to go to the comedy show, or like something that we get to look forward to. And in the back of our minds, just knowing this is important. Like, these things are just as important as showing up at the meeting at 3 p.m. at work or whatever it is. That work can spill into all hours of the day. This grew in 2020. Lots of people worked from home. How do you view this ongoing debate, like remote work, non-remote work? Like, can we actually be productive and maintain these connections and relationships and build a great culture if we're working remotely? Like, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yes. Physical distance does not imply emotional distance. Probably my closest project team was at the beginning of the pandemic when we were 100% remote. So yes, we can definitely have strong cultures, strong teams, all remote. The more complex answer to that is I am pro remote and hybrid work. And as a human, I also like being in an office. Now, the trick is I don't want someone to make me be in an office. I just want to be in an office. So we also have to grapple with the fact that RTO, office, remote, hybrid, all these things, it's really mired in a lot of power struggles. more so than anything else. Like, I think that's sort of the underlying tension amongst it all of who's going to decide where I work? Do I decide where my brain works best and what I need to be productive? Does my employer decide that? How do we decide amongst a team? So I think there's a lot of that there. But also, I will say I like being in an office, not all days, but some days, because I like hanging around the people I'm working with. I genuinely enjoy having colleagues and laughing together. I enjoy what the third dimension allows, which is standing at a whiteboard and sketching things out, or even just noticing, like, oh, cool shoes, those kinds of things. And so it's way multifaceted. And then when you get to the part about like always on work, this is a whole other complexity. So, Microsoft recently released the Infinite Workday report saying that people are waking up at like 6 a.m. to start looking at emails. They're working that evening. Meetings have increased significantly over the last, year over year. This is another problem. And this one, I would say, is a top down. This needs to be a top down solution because it's very hard as an individual to say, oh, no, I'm just not working at night when you're going to get so much side eye from your team. This needs to be more of like a leadership. We're going to sign off at this time. If there's truly some kind of emergency, then we have some sort of plan for that. But otherwise, the leader really has to set the culture. So much there.
Yeah, I know. I was like, this is such a big topic. I feel like we could just go on and on. There's just so many things to unpack. There's so many things to talk about when it comes to this stuff. It's interesting that you talk about it coming from the leadership because I have a friend who used to call me on his way home always at the same time because they made people leave by 5:30. Like you had to be out of the office, like you had to, like they made you leave. And I thought that was really interesting, especially because, there are lots of people that, as you said, they just find a lot of joy in their work. They do really enjoy working. I think some people would consider a friend of theirs a workaholic when really they don't see themselves as a workaholic because they really find joy in their lives. But I do also think there is this balance. And that's a whole other podcast on like our obsession with like productivity and quicker, faster, all the things. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a leader today to cultivate a culture where people can find joy in their work?
Yeah, the best thing a leader can do is show a little bit more of your humanity tomorrow. I'll give you some examples of things you could do. I'm a big fan of showing up to meetings with wet hair because I like to exercise in the morning. I come home, I shower, I pop on the first call of the day. And you know what? I'm not going to give up my health for blow drying my hair because my brain works just as well if my hair is wet or dry. So that's an easy one. If you're bald, my apologies. I'll have other examples. Another one, if you have a lunch meeting, like it's running over lunchtime, don't starve yourself. As a leader, make yourself some lunch. Now, you want to like pick your moments, right? Like if you're having an earnings call, like maybe don't skip the lunch. But if you're with your team, show people that we can be humans at work because we are, right? And humans need to eat around lunchtime. And so a better solution would be having a break for lunch. But if you don't have a break, make yourself a nice salad. Or otherwise, divulge a little something about your life. Now, this doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest secrets, but I always think it's so odd how we work with people for so long and don't even know simple things like, do you have a sibling? Like, wait, where did you grow up? Wait, you have a pet? Just some very basic facts. And so if you as the leader can model, instead of jumping right into the meeting saying, oh, my kid was like such a bear to get out to camp this morning. True story. Sorry, Arden. Now I've given permission for other people to show up as humans with full lives. So any little sliver of pulling back the business mask, just a little, will allow other people to sort of relax into the team, feel a little bit more human and connected, and ultimately have more fun.
Beautiful. I love that. All right. Awesome. And is there any resources, books that you've read, things that like have really inspired you over the past couple of maybe the last like 6 months that you think leaders would really enjoy?
Oh boy.
You're like, I'm too busy writing my book, Kate. I don't have time to read other people's books.
It's only partly true. I will say, I wish I had like a secret author to give you a behind the scenes, but no, I just have a very popular one. I love Oliver Berkman's work. He wrote 4,000 Weeks and Meditations for Mortals. It's a really great counter narrative to our obsession with productivity, hustle, getting it all done. You know, the sooner we can realize work is just a bottomless pit, we're never going to dig to the bottom, the better. And he makes such a great argument for that. So if what we should really do is just give up, we should give up getting to the bottom of our work pits for the day, and you sign off and have a nice meal with a friend or a family or by yourself. So highly recommend his books and his work.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, Bree, it was so great chatting with you. We'll have to have you come back on because, again, this topic is so big. It is so important, and leaders really just need to hear these kinds of messages. And then, you know, every team member, like just humans, we all need this message. I think every one of us has probably had a day where we're like, ugh, what am I doing? And this day is just so difficult and challenging. And then we almost feel like we're going to give up. And then, you know what? Something happens and shows up, and we get excited to show up the next day and to continue to do the work that we're doing. And so your work is needed. So thank you for writing this book. I'm very excited for you. And this is going to be a whole kind of new journey for you too. So we'll have to have you come back on it in a year and see where you've been and how many more leaders you're inspiring.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you got at least one idea out of this episode, something that inspires you to make work more fun. Maybe you lead a team, maybe you're part of a team. Maybe this is your opportunity to take a look at some of the areas in your work and what are those little pockets of joy that you might be missing? What are some of the things that you really love about your work that on those days that it's a little bit challenging, a little bit hard, you can turn back to that list and say, oh, this is what we're here for. This is why I really enjoy the work that I get to do. Maybe it's the mission that you're on. Maybe it's the people that you work with. Maybe it's the skill set that you get to use. Maybe it's because you're growing so much in different areas. What do you love about your work? What do you find so much joy in doing? Maybe there's someone on your team that really needs to hear this message. Send this podcast to them so that they can find more joy in their work too. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. And until next time, lead with culture.